I'd rather die than marry her. Claire's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. She sat 3 bar stools away, hidden in the dim corner lighting, and every word from Ethan Pierce's mouth landed like a stone in her chest. His friends laughed. He smiled, cold, certain, untouchable. She had 15 minutes before their blind date officially started at the restaurant next door. Her hands trembled as she set down the glass. He doesn't even know what I look like, she thought, and he's already decided I'm not worth living for. She could leave. She could walk out, call her mother, say it didn't work out, or she could stay and make him regret every single word. If you've ever been judged before someone even knew your name, stay. This one's for you. Claire Donovan had learned to smile through disappointment, for she'd been doing it her whole life. At family dinners where her older sister's engagement was celebrated, while Claire's dating life became a sympathetic footnote. At work events where colleagues asked if she was seeing anyone, with that particular tone that meant still. At her mother's gentle but relentless hints that time was moving and good men don't wait forever. So when her mother called 3 weeks ago with that bright, hopeful voice, "Claire, darling, I have someone I'd like you to meet." Claire had said yes, even though everything in her wanted to say no, because that's what good daughters did. She stood now in front of her bedroom mirror, 20 minutes before the date, wearing a navy dress that was elegant without trying too hard. Her dark hair fell in soft waves. She'd done her makeup carefully. Not too much, not too little. The eternal calculus of women trying to be effortlessly perfect. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Jenna. "You got this. He'd be lucky to have you," Claire typed back. "Or he'll spend 2 hours talking about crypto and his ex. Then you drink expensive wine on his dime and leave." She smiled despite the knot in her stomach. The matchmaker, one of those exclusive services her mother had somehow connected with, had been infuriatingly vague. "He's successful, intelligent, looking for something real." Translation: rich, emotionally unavailable, probably commitment phobic. His name was Ethan Pierce. Claire had made the mistake of Googling him. Tech entrepreneur, venture capitalist, Forbes 30, under 33 years running, now 34. Devastatingly handsome in that sharp-jawed, expensive suit way that probably meant he knew it. Every photo showed the same expression: controlled, distant, like he was calculating profit margins even at charity galas. This is going to be a disaster, she thought, but she went anyway. Ethan Pierce didn't want to be here. He sat at the bar of the Harriet, an upscale spot in the financial district, nursing scotch and ignoring his friend's attempts to make this entertaining. "Come on, man," Ryan said, grinning like this was all a joke. "It's one dinner. Your mom set it up. How bad could it be?" "My mother," Ethan said flatly, "thinks I need balance in my life, as if adding another person to my calendar solves anything." "Maybe she's hot," offered Marcus, ever the optimist. Ethan didn't respond. He'd seen exactly one photo, provided by the matchmaker after he'd finally relented to his mother's months of pestering, and honestly, he'd barely looked. Dark hair, nice smile, worked in publishing or something equally unimpressive. The kind of woman his mother thought would soften him. He didn't need softening. He needed people to leave him alone. "You could just cancel," Ryan pointed out, "and deal with my mother's disappointment for the next 6 months?" "No." Ethan checked his watch, 7:43. The reservation was for 8 p.m. at Marcel's, the French place next door. He had 17 minutes of freedom left. "So what's her deal?" Marcus asked. "The matchmaker give you a full profile?" "Claire something. Donovan. Works in book editing. Comes from a good family. Whatever that means." Ethan's voice dripped with disinterest. "Honestly, I'd rather die than marry her." His friends laughed. "Bit dramatic," Ryan said. "I'm serious. This whole thing, blind dates, matchmakers, my mother playing puppeteer, it's archaic. If I wanted a relationship, I'd find one myself." "And yet you haven't," Marcus pointed out. Ethan's jaw tightened. "By choice." The conversation drifted. Stocks, a deal closing next week, someone's upcoming trip to Dubai. But Ethan stayed quiet, swirling his scotch, feeling the familiar numbness settle in. This was his life now. Transactions disguised as social interaction, routines disguised as living. At 7:55, he stood. "Gentlemen, wish me luck." "You'll be fine," Ryan said. "Just be yourself." "That's the problem," Ethan muttered. He didn't see the woman in the navy dress sitting 3 stools down in the shadowed corner, her face pale, her hands gripping her wine glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Claire had arrived early, a habit born from anxiety, and decided to have a drink first to steady her nerves. The bar was elegant, low-lit, the kind of place where conversations hummed beneath jazz piano. She'd chosen a corner seat deliberately, wanting a few minutes of invisibility before the performance began. She was scrolling through her phone, trying to distract herself, when she heard the voice. Deep, confident, dismissive. "Honestly, I'd rather die than marry her." Her head snapped up. 3 men sat at the bar 15 feet away. She recognized Ethan Pierce immediately. He looked exactly like his photos, except colder somehow, more angular in person. He was talking about her. Claire's heart hammered. She should leave. She should stand up, walk out, preserve whatever dignity she had left. But her body wouldn't move. This whole thing, blind dates, matchmakers, my mother playing puppeteer, it's archaic. Each word was a small, precise knife. He hasn't even met me, she thought, and the humiliation was so sharp it felt physical. She watched him stand, adjust his cuffs, say something to his friends she couldn't hear. He walked past her, so close she could smell his cologne, and never once glanced her direction, because she was invisible, because she didn't matter. Claire sat frozen for 30 seconds, her mind spinning. Then slowly, something shifted. The hurt crystallized into something harder, sharper. "You don't even know me," she thought, "and you've already decided I'm beneath you." She finished her wine in one long swallow, stood, and smoothed her dress. The reservation was for 8 p.m. She was going to show up. And Ethan Pierce was going to regret every single word. Ethan arrived at Marcel's at exactly 8 o'clock because punctuality was a reflex. The hostess greeted him with practiced warmth. "Mr. Pierce, your table is ready. Your guest hasn't arrived yet." Of course not, he thought. Probably running late. Another sign this is a waste of time. He was led to a private corner table, white tablecloth, flickering candles, the kind of romantic setup that felt like a stage set. He ordered sparkling water and checked his phone, already composing the polite exit strategy he'd use after appetizers. At 8:07, he sensed movement. He looked up and froze. The woman approaching his table was beautiful, striking actually, in a navy dress that fit perfectly, her dark hair framing a face that was both soft and sharp. Her eyes. Her eyes were looking at him like she knew something. "Ethan Pierce?" she said, her voice steady. "Yes, you must be Claire Donovan." She slid into the seat across from him with unsettling grace. "Sorry I'm late. I was having a drink at the bar." Something in her tone made his stomach tighten. "No problem," he said automatically, reaching for his water. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So," Claire said, leaning forward slightly, "before we start, I have a question." "Of course. If you had to choose between marrying me or death, hypothetically speaking, which would you pick?" The water glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His mind went blank, and Claire's smile sharpened into something that made his blood run cold. "Take your time," she said sweetly. "And I'll wait. If you've ever wanted to watch someone's arrogance crumble in real time, don't go anywhere. This is about to get good." Ethan's mind raced through the last 30 minutes like rewinding footage, searching for the moment everything went wrong. The bar, his friends, the conversation. Oh, God. "You were..." His voice came out rougher than intended. "You were at the Harriet." 3 stools down, Claire confirmed, her tone pleasant, casual, like they were discussing the weather. "Lovely Scotch selection there. I'm more of a wine person myself, but I appreciated the ambiance." She picked up her menu, eyes scanning the appetizers. "The lighting's quite dim in the corner, isn't it? Easy to miss someone." The waiter appeared with impeccable timing. Good evening. May I start you with something to drink? Champagne, Claire said without looking up. Your best bottle. Certainly, miss. And for you, sir? Ethan couldn't form words. His throat had closed. He'll have the same, Claire answered for him. We're celebrating. The waiter left, and silence crashed down like a wave. Ethan forced himself to meet her eyes. They were brown, darker than he'd registered in the photo, and they held something he couldn't quite name. Hurt, yes, anger, definitely. But underneath that, something sharper, something that looked like control. Claire, you know what's funny? She set down the menu, folding her hands on the table. I almost didn't come tonight. I was nervous. Isn't that ridiculous? I actually spent 20 minutes choosing this dress, making sure I looked. She paused, smiled bitterly. Hey, worth staying alive for. The words hit him like a fist. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Her voice was quiet now, but it cut deeper than shouting. You meant every word. You looked at my name on a piece of paper and decided I wasn't worth your time. You didn't need to meet me to know I'd be a burden, an obligation, something your mother forced on you. That's not. Were you lying to your friends, Ethan? She leaned forward, and he could see the tremor in her hands despite her steady voice. When you said you'd rather die than marry me, was that exaggeration? Hyperbole? Or did you genuinely mean you'd choose death over a future with someone you've never met? He had no answer that wouldn't damn him further. The champagne arrived. The waiter poured with ceremony, oblivious to the tension thick enough to choke on. When they were alone again, Claire lifted her glass. To honesty, she said, and terrible first impressions. Ethan didn't move. You're not going to toast? Claire's eyebrow arched. Come on, Ethan. You can at least pretend to have manners. He picked up his glass mechanically. It felt like holding evidence at his own trial. They drank in silence. Claire's hand shook as she set down the champagne flute, but she didn't let him see. Everything in her was screaming to leave, to walk out with her head high and never look back. But she'd come this far. She'd watched his face drain of color, seen the exact moment he realized what he'd done, and something in her needed to stay. Needed to make him sit in this discomfort the way she'd sat in hers at that bar. I'm sorry. His voice was low, sincere, and she hated how much she wanted to believe it. Are you? She studied him over the candlelight. He looked different now, smaller somehow, despite his obvious physical presence. The arrogance had cracked. Or are you just sorry you got caught? Both. He ran a hand through his dark hair, disheveling the perfect styling. God, both. There's no excuse for what I said. No, Claire agreed. There isn't. If I could take it back, but you can't. She kept her voice level. Those words exist now. You said them. Your friends heard them. I heard them. And now we both have to sit here and pretend we're on a date while you decide how quickly you can escape, and I decide whether your apology means anything at all. Ethan looked at her. Really looked, maybe for the first time. And Claire felt exposed under his gaze. She'd wanted this, and wanted him to see her, but now that he was, it felt dangerous. You're right, he said finally, about all of it. I was an asshole. I am an asshole. And you should leave. You should walk out right now and tell everyone what kind of person I am. Is that what you want? What I want, Ethan said, his voice rough with something that sounded like self-loathing, doesn't matter. I lost the right to want anything from you the moment I opened my mouth. Claire studied him. His jaw was tight, his shoulders tense. He looked miserable, genuinely, deeply uncomfortable. And part of her, the part that had spent 6 years editing manuscripts about flawed men finding redemption, wondered if there was more to him than the cruel words at the bar. The other part reminded her that wondering like that was exactly how women got hurt. Oh, why did you agree to this? She asked. The blind date. If you hate the idea so much, why show up? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. My mother. That's it? Maternal obligation? It's complicated. We have time. Claire gestured to the empty table. We haven't even ordered appetizers. He looked at her like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't have an answer. Why are you still here? I asked first. A ghost of a smile crossed his face, then vanished. My mother, she worries. I work too much. I don't engage with life. I've been avoiding her setups for 2 years and she finally wore me down. I thought, he stopped. You thought you'd show up, suffer through one dinner, and she'd leave you alone. Yes. And I was just the unfortunate woman who drew the short straw. His wince told her she'd hit the mark. Claire picked up her champagne again, buying time. She should be furious. She was furious. But she was also something else. Curious, maybe, or just tired of pretending everything was fine when it never was. I'm here, she said slowly, because I heard what you said, and I decided I'd rather make you uncomfortable than let you think your words don't have consequences. Mission accomplished. Is it? She tilted her head. You apologized. You admitted you were wrong. But I don't think you understand why what you said was so horrible. Because it was cruel. It was dismissive. Claire set down her glass with more force than intended. You looked at my name, not my face, not my personality, not anything real about me, and decided I was worthless. You didn't even give me the dignity of rejection after meeting me. You rejected the idea of me. The concept. And you did it with so much certainty, so much arrogance, that you made a joke about choosing death instead. Her voice had risen slightly. She could feel the heat in her cheeks, the champagne mixing with adrenaline. Do you know how that feels, she continued, to hear someone reduce your entire existence to a punchline? To realize that to them, you're not even a person. You're just an inconvenience their mother created? Ethan's face had gone pale again. Claire, I came tonight because I thought maybe there was a chance this wouldn't be a disaster, that the matchmaker saw something real, that your mother knew something I didn't. She laughed, but it came out broken. How stupid was that? It wasn't stupid? Yes, it was. She reached for her purse. I should go. Please don't. The rawness in his voice stopped her. Give me one reason, Claire said. Why I should stay and have dinner with someone who'd rather die than know me. Ethan stood abruptly, and for a moment she thought he was leaving. Instead, he moved around the table, pulling out the chair beside her rather than across. He sat, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. Because I was wrong, he said quietly. Because I'm an idiot who judges things before understanding them. Because I've spent 4 years building walls so high I forgot what it's like to actually talk to someone. He paused, jaw working. And because in the last 10 minutes, you've made me feel more awake than I have in years. Claire's breath caught. That's not fair, she whispered. I know. You don't get to say cruel things and then say something like that. I know. They sat in silence. Oh, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, far enough that they weren't touching. I don't forgive you, Claire said finally. I wouldn't forgive me either. And I don't trust you. You shouldn't. But she closed her eyes, hating herself a little. I'll stay for dinner, one dinner, and if you say one more dismissive, arrogant thing, I'm gone. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was looking at her with something that might have been gratitude, or might have been relief, or might have been the first honest emotion she'd seen from him all night. Deal, he said softly. The waiter returned, tactfully ignoring the new seating arrangement. Have we decided? He asked. Claire picked up the menu, scanning quickly. The scallops and the risotto. Excellent choice. And for you, sir? Ethan hadn't looked at his menu once. Hey, whatever she's having. The waiter left, and Claire raised an eyebrow. You don't know what I ordered. No, Ethan admitted, but I trust your judgment more than mine right now. It wasn't an apology. It was something smaller and more honest. An admission of fault, a gesture of deference. Claire felt the anger loosen just slightly. Tell me about your work, Ethan said. Publishing, right? Book editing, mostly literary fiction. Do you enjoy it? She expected the question to sound rote, obligatory, but he was leaning forward slightly, eyes focused entirely on her, and she realized with a jolt that he was actually listening. I love it, she said carefully. I get to help people tell stories, shape narratives. Sometimes I find a manuscript that's rough and chaotic, and I work with the author for months, and by the end I transformed. It's like watching something beautiful emerge from something broken. That sounds, Ethan paused, searching for words. Redemptive. It can be. Do you believe in that? Redemption? The question hung between them, heavy with subtext. Claire met his eyes. I believe people can change. Whether they will is a different question. Fair. The food arrived. Perfectly plated scallops over saffron risotto. Claire took a bite, grateful for the distraction. It was exquisite, but she barely tasted it. Her entire body was hyper-aware of Ethan beside her, the way his shoulder almost brushed hers, the way he kept glancing at her like he was memorizing details he'd missed before. Can I ask you something? Ethan said quietly. That depends on the question. Why did you agree to this date? Hey, before you heard what I said, why say yes to a blind date at all? Claire considered lying, considered giving him some easy answer about being open to new experiences. Instead, she told the truth. Because I'm tired, she said. Tired of dating apps where everyone's performing a character. Tired of setups by well-meaning friends who don't actually know what I need. Tired of being alone and pretending it doesn't bother me. She took another sip of champagne. The matchmaker said you were looking for something real. And I thought, maybe that meant you were tired too. Ethan was very still. I am, he said finally. Tired. Not that I deserve. Stop. Claire turned to face him fully. If we're doing this, if we're actually having dinner, you need to stop apologizing every 30 seconds. I heard you the first time. What the question is what you do now. What do you want me to do? I want you to be honest. No performance. No walls. If this is going to be worth anything at all, I need to know who you actually are. Not the billionaire, not the guy from Forbes. You. The words settled between them like a challenge. Ethan exhaled slowly. I don't know if I remember how to do that. Try. He looked down at his untouched plate, then back at her. And for the first time that night, she saw something real behind his eyes. Something vulnerable and uncertain. I'm afraid, he said quietly, that if I let someone in, I'll lose them. So I keep everyone at arm's length. I work 80-hour weeks. I say yes to blind dates, but sabotage them before they start because it's safer than hoping. His voice dropped. And tonight I met someone who called me on every piece of bullshit I've been telling myself, and I don't know whether to thank you or run. Claire's heart was pounding. For the record, she said softly, running would prove you're exactly who I thought you were at that bar. And staying? Staying would surprise me. Ethan held her gaze. I'd like to surprise you. The restaurant noise faded, the clatter of silverware, the murmur of other diners. All of it became background. There was only this. Two people sitting too close, their walls cracking in real time. The air between them charged with something neither had expected. Claire reached for her water, needing something to do with her hands. So we're staying, she said. We're staying, Ethan confirmed. For dinner. For dinner. Neither of them mentioned what might happen after. And the dinner lasted 3 hours. They talked about books. Ethan admitted he hadn't read fiction in years, only business biographies and market analysis. Claire confessed she sometimes hated literary fiction, the pretentious kind that cared more about impressing critics than telling a story that mattered. They talked about family, his mother's relentless matchmaking, her older sister's perfect marriage that somehow made Claire's singleness feel like failure. He told her about his father's expectations, the pressure to build empires. She told him about her mother's quiet disappointment, the unspoken questions at every holiday dinner. They didn't talk about the bar. They didn't talk about his words. But the words hung there anyway, a third presence at the table. And by the time dessert arrived, creme brulee they didn't order but the waiter brought anyway, Claire had almost forgotten she was supposed to be angry. Almost. I should go, she said as Ethan signed the check with a black credit card that probably had no limit. Let me drive you home. I can take a cab. Claire! He said her name like he was testing how it felt. Please, it's late. She should say no, should maintain distance, protect herself from whatever this was becoming. Fine, she heard herself say. His car was exactly what she expected. Sleek, black, German, probably cost more than her yearly salary. She slid into the leather passenger seat and gave him her address in Brooklyn. That's 40 minutes from here, Ethan said, pulling into traffic. Anna, I know where I live. I just meant you commute an hour each way for work? Not everyone has a penthouse in Manhattan. The words came out sharper than she intended. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... It's fine. Claire stared out the window at the city lights bleeding past. I'm used to it. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Ethan spoke again. Tonight was unexpected. That's one word for it. I meant in a good way. Claire turned to look at him. His profile was sharp in the dashboard light. Strong jaw, straight nose. The kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. But there was tension around his eyes. A tightness that suggested he was working through something. What are you thinking? She asked. That I don't want this to end. Her stomach flipped. Ethan, I know. I know I don't deserve a second chance. I know you should hate me, but... He exhaled. Can I see you again? The question sat between them like an unexploded bomb. Why? Claire asked quietly. Because you're the first person in years who's seen past the resume. Because you're brilliant and sharp and you don't let me get away with anything. Because... He stopped at a red light, turned to face her fully. Because I haven't felt this alive in 4 years, and I think you might be the reason why. The light turned green. A car honked behind them. Ethan accelerated, but Claire's heart was still stopped at that intersection. That's not fair, she whispered. I know. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because, she struggled to find words. Because I heard what you really think. I know that this, whatever this is just adrenaline. A guilt, maybe. You feel bad, so you're trying to make it right. But in a week, you'll remember why you said those words. You'll remember that I'm just the woman your mother set you up with. The obligation. That's not true. Isn't it? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. They crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, the skyline receding behind them. 4 years ago, he said finally, I was engaged. Claire's breath caught. Her name was Amanda. We were together for 3 years. Planning a wedding, I thought... His voice roughened. I thought I had my whole life figured out. And then one day she came home and said she couldn't do it anymore. That I was married to my work. That she felt like an accessory in my life, not a partner. Ethan, she was right. He gripped the steering wheel harder. She left, and instead of changing, and he closed off. I convinced myself relationships were distractions. That caring about someone meant giving them power to hurt you. So I worked more. Built more. Made sure I never had to feel that vulnerable again. He pulled up to a red light, turned to look at her. Tonight I was cruel because I've been telling myself for 4 years that I don't need anyone, that wanting connection is weakness. And then my mother sets me up, and I panic, and I say something unforgivable because it's easier than admitting I'm terrified. Claire's throat was tight. Terrified of what? That I might actually want this, want you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and utterly devastating. The light changed. Neither of them moved until another car honked. Claire's apartment building was a 5th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was gentrifying, which meant the rent was too high, but the hallway still smelled like old takeout. Ethan pulled up to the curb, put the car in park. This is me, Claire said, not moving. Claire, I need to think. She reached for the door handle. Tonight was a lot, and I need time. How much time? I don't know. She opened the door, stepped out into the October cold. Ethan got out too, came around the car. Can I call you? He asked. I don't know if that's a good idea. Please. She looked at him, really looked. His expensive coat, his perfect hair now slightly mussed, his eyes holding something desperate and real. 1 week, she said. Give me 1 week to figure out if this is real or if I'm just... He caught up in something that will hurt me. And then maybe we'll see. Ethan nodded slowly. 1 week. Claire turned toward her building, then stopped. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for dinner and for being honest. That took courage. Before he could respond, she walked inside. Ethan sat in his car for 20 minutes after she disappeared into the building, staring at the yellow light in what he assumed was her window. His phone buzzed. Ryan, how'd it go? You survive? Ethan stared at the text, then typed, I'm an idiot. That bad? Worse. She heard everything I said at the bar. What? Dude, is she pressing charges? She should be. So what happened? Ethan looked up at her window again. I think I just met someone who could change my life, and I might have already ruined it. Ryan didn't respond for a full minute. Then, fix it. Ethan drove home slowly, replaying every moment of the dinner, her eyes when she'd first sat down, the tremor in her hands when she'd called him out, the way she'd softened when he admitted he was afraid. He'd meant every word, and that terrified him more than anything. Claire climbed the 5 flights, unlocked 3 deadbolts, and collapsed against her door the moment it closed. Her phone buzzed immediately. Jenna, tell me everything. Claire stared at the text, trying to figure out where to even start. He's complicated, good complicated or runaway complicated? Both. Claire. He said horrible things, then apologized, then told me I made him feel alive, then asked to see me again. And you said? I said I need a week. Do you like him? Claire closed her eyes, head against the door. The honest answer was worse than yes. The honest answer was that she'd spent 3 hours with a man who should have been irredeemable, and she'd seen something underneath the arrogance, something wounded and lonely and desperately trying to protect itself. She'd seen herself. I don't know, she typed back. Ask me in a week. The week that followed was torture. Claire threw herself into work, editing a debut novel about second chances. The irony wasn't lost on her. Meeting with authors, staying late at the office to avoid going home where she'd just overthink everything. But Ethan was everywhere anyway. She'd see a man in a dark coat and her heart would jump. She'd pass a bar and remember the sound of his voice saying those words. She'd pour wine and think about champagne, about the way his eyes had looked when he'd admitted he was afraid. On Wednesday, flowers arrived at her office. Not roses, too obvious. Peonies, her favorite, though she'd never told him that. The card read, Day 3, still thinking about you. Jenna appeared at her cubicle within seconds. Who's E? No one. Those are $200 flowers, Claire. E is not no one. Claire buried her face in her hands. On Friday, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Day 5. I've read 3 novels this week, trying to understand what you love about stories. Turns out I've been living like a character who refuses his own arc. Despite everything, she smiled. She didn't respond. Saturday night, Claire met Jenna for drinks at a wine bar in the village. Okay, Jenna said, 2 glasses in. Explain to me why you're torturing yourself. I'm not. He sends you flowers. He texts you literary analysis. He's clearly obsessed, and you clearly like him. So what's the problem? The problem, Claire said, is that he said he'd rather die than marry me. Before he met you. That doesn't make it okay. No, Jenna agreed, but people say stupid things. The question is whether he meant it or whether he was just scared. Claire swirled her wine. What if I let him in and he hurts me? What if this whole thing is just him trying to assuage his guilt? What if it's not, Jenna countered. What if he's actually falling for you, and you're too scared to find out? Since when are you Team Ethan? Since I saw your face when you talk about him. Jenna reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Claire, you haven't been this lit up about anyone in years. Maybe he doesn't deserve a second chance. No, but maybe you deserve to find out what happens if you give him one. Sunday arrived, day 7. Claire woke up to her phone buzzing. Good morning, it's been a week. Can we talk? She stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then she typed, Coffee, 2 p.m. The place on 7th. His response was immediate, I'll be there. Claire arrived at 1:50, 10 minutes early out of habit. She ordered a latte, sat at a corner table, and tried not to spiral. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened. Ethan walked in, and her breath caught the same way it had that first night. He looked different, less polished. His hair was slightly messy, his shirt untucked under his coat. He looked like he hadn't slept well. He looked like she felt. Their eyes met across the coffee shop. He walked over slowly, sat down across from her like he was afraid sudden movements might spook her. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Silence. "I read your text 15 times," Ethan admitted, trying to figure out what you were thinking. "And? I have no idea." Claire almost smiled. "Good. I'd hate to be predictable." "Claire," he leaned forward, "I know I don't deserve this, any of this, but I need you to know, this week has been hell. Not being able to talk to you, not knowing if I'd ever see you again. I kept thinking about what you said, about redemption, about people changing. And, and I want to try, with you, if you'll let me." Claire's heart hammered. "Ethan, I can't be your redemption arc. I can't be the project you fix to feel better about yourself. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He held her gaze. "It's me realizing that I've been half alive for 4 years, and one dinner with you made me feel more than I've felt in all that time combined. It's me being terrified that I'll mess this up, but being more terrified of not trying. It's me asking, begging for a chance to show you that I'm not the asshole at the bar. Or maybe I am, but I'm also someone who wants to be better. For you." Claire couldn't breathe. "One real date," Ethan said quietly. "Not a setup, not an obligation, just us. And if at the end of it you still think I'm full of shit, I'll walk away. I promise." She should say no. She should protect herself. She should... "Okay," she whispered. Ethan's eyes widened. "Okay? One date. A real one. But Ethan..." She met his eyes. "If you hurt me, if this turns out to be some ego thing, I'm done. No second chances after this. Understood? And no expensive restaurants, no performance. I want to see who you are when you're not trying to impress anyone." A slow smile crossed his face. Genuine, warm, devastating. "Deal," he said. "If you've ever said yes when everything in you screamed no, you know this feeling. Stay close. It gets messier from here." Their real first date happened on a Tuesday. Ethan picked her up at 6 p.m., wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a sweater that looked soft enough to touch. Claire almost didn't recognize him without the armor of a suit. "No car service?" she asked, eyeing the Tesla he was driving himself. "You said no performance." He opened her door. "This is me trying." He took her to a small Italian place in Brooklyn, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a grandmother cooking in the back. No reservations, no private tables. They waited 20 minutes for a spot, standing outside in the cold, shoulders brushing. "How did you find this place?" Claire asked. "I Googled restaurants that feel like home." He looked almost embarrassed. This had 500 reviews saying it reminded people of their childhood. Something in her chest cracked open. Dinner was simple. Pasta, red wine, bread warm enough to steam when they tore it open. Ethan told her about growing up in Connecticut, his father's impossible standards, the pressure to be perfect. She told him about her dad leaving when she was 12, how her mom worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. "Is that why you work so hard?" he asked. "To prove something?" "Maybe." Claire twirled pasta on her fork. "Or maybe I just don't know how to stop. I understand that." Their eyes met, and the recognition between them felt dangerous. After dinner, he drove her to the Brooklyn Heights promenade. The skyline glittered across the water. Manhattan lit up like a promise or a warning. They walked slowly, hands in pockets, the November wind biting. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan stopped walking, turned to face her. "Okay." "That night at the bar, I wasn't just being cruel. I was being a coward." His voice was rough. "I saw your photo before I got there, and you were beautiful. You looked kind, real, and it terrified me. Because if I let myself care, if I let you matter..." He trailed off. "You'd have something to lose," Claire finished quietly. "Yes." She stepped closer until she could see her reflection in his eyes. "Ethan, I need you to understand something. I've spent my whole life making myself smaller so I wouldn't be too much for people. And when I heard what you said," her voice caught, "it confirmed every fear I've ever had about not being enough. Claire, but standing here now, I realize something else." She reached up, touched his face gently. You were right to be scared, because I could hurt you too. This could destroy both of us if we're not careful. So what do we do? She smiled, sad and hopeful at once. We try anyway. Ethan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. They stood like that, not kissing, just breathing the same air, while the city sparkled around them. I'm still terrified, he whispered. Me too. But I don't want to walk away. Then don't. 3 weeks later, Claire realized she was falling in love. It happened in small moments. Ethan showing up at her office with coffee during a deadline crisis, remembering she took it with oat milk. The way he listened when she talked about books, actually listened, asking questions that showed he cared about what mattered to her. How he'd started reading fiction, texting her thoughts about characters at midnight like a student discovering literature for the first time. They'd seen each other 12 times. Real dates, museums, bookstores, a cooking class where they'd burned garlic bread and laughed until her ribs hurt. He'd met Jenna, who'd grudgingly admitted he might be acceptable. She'd met his brother, who'd pulled her aside and whispered, I haven't seen him smile like this in years. Everything was perfect, which meant Claire knew something was about to break. It broke on a Thursday. She was at Ethan's penthouse, her first time there. He'd been nervous showing her, and she understood why the moment she walked in. It was beautiful and empty, like a hotel suite designed by someone who'd forgotten people actually lived in homes. I know it's cold, he'd said, watching her take in the minimalist furniture. The art that looked expensive, but impersonal. I never bothered making it feel like anything. We could change that, Claire had offered, if you wanted. The smile he'd given her had been so full of hope it hurt. They were cooking dinner. She was teaching him how to make risotto when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. I need to take this. His voice had gone flat, distant. It's work. He stepped into his office, closing the door. Claire stirred the risotto, so trying not to eavesdrop. But the apartment was quiet enough that his voice carried. Sharp, cold, nothing like the warm tone he used with her. I don't care what the timeline is. Make it happen. That's not my problem. If they can't deliver, find someone who can. She'd heard this version of him before, at that bar, talking about her like she was an inconvenience. The memory made her stomach turn. When he came back 15 minutes later, his face was a mask. Sorry about that. He reached for the spoon, but his movements were mechanical. Everything okay? Fine. Just a deal in Singapore falling through. Ethan, can we just finish dinner? The warmth from earlier had vanished. He was back behind his walls, and Claire could feel the distance opening between them like a chasm. They ate in near silence. Afterward, before she started gathering her things. You're leaving. He looked almost panicked. You're clearly not here right now, and I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it's not. Claire, it's just work stress. No. She turned to face him. It's you shutting me out the second something goes wrong. It's you turning back into the person who uses control as a shield. That's not fair, isn't it? Her voice rose. The moment you got that call, you disappeared. You went cold, and I watched you become exactly the person your ex-fiancé left. The words landed like a slap. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? You told me yourself. You work to avoid feeling things. And the second you're stressed, you revert. You shut down. Oh, you push people away. I'm not pushing you away. Then what do you call this? She gestured between them. An hour ago we were laughing. Now you can barely look at me. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, pacing. You want me to just, what? Fall apart every time something goes wrong at work? Burden you with every problem? I want you to let me in, Claire's voice cracked. I want you to trust that I can handle seeing you stressed without running away. I want you to stop treating intimacy like a weakness you have to hide. I'm trying. Are you? Because right now it feels like you're still the man at the bar who'd rather die than let someone close. The silence that followed was devastating. Ethan's face had gone pale. If that's what you think of me, that's what I'm afraid of, Claire whispered. Sure, I'm terrified that the person you've been with me these past 3 weeks is just a performance, that when things get hard, you'll revert to the guy who's married to his work and treats people like transactions. And what if I am that guy? His voice was harsh now, defensive. What if this us is just me pretending to be someone I'm not? The question hung in the air like a grenade. Claire felt tears burning her eyes. Then I guess we're done. She grabbed her coat. Claire, wait. No? She turned at the door. You need to figure out who you are, Ethan, and whether you actually want to change or whether you just wanted to feel better about yourself for a few weeks. That's not... Prove it. Her voice was steady despite the tears. Prove that I matter more than your walls. Prove that you're willing to actually do the hard work of being vulnerable, not just when it's easy, but when it's terrifying. She walked out. The elevator ride down felt like falling. Ethan stood in his empty penthouse, the silence crushing. He wanted to chase her. He wanted to fix this. He wanted to call his assistant and bury himself in work until he stopped feeling this way. His phone was in his hand before he realized what he was doing. He stopped, put it down, and for the first time in 4 years, he let himself sit with the pain instead of running from it. Claire cried on the subway. She texted Jenna, I think I just ended things. What happened? He shut down, and I couldn't watch him become the person who hurts me. Do you love him? Claire stared at the question through blurred vision. Yes, that's why it hurts so much. 2 days passed. Claire threw herself into work, editing a manuscript about a man learning to love after loss. The irony was excruciating. On Saturday morning, her doorbell rang. She almost didn't answer, but something made her walk to the door, peer through the peephole. Ethan stood in the hallway holding a box. She opened the door slowly. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, wearing the same sweater from their first real date. Hi, he said quietly. Hi. Can I come in? She stepped aside. He walked to her small living room, set down the box on her coffee table. She recognized it immediately, the expensive minimalist art from his penthouse. What is this? I'm selling the penthouse, Ethan said, or at least I'm trying to make it feel less like a mausoleum. I packed up everything that was just for show. I ate everything I bought to fill space instead of actually living. Claire stared at him. You were right, he continued, his voice rough, about all of it. I shut down when I got scared. I used work as an excuse to avoid feeling things. I've been living like someone who's already decided love isn't worth the risk. Ethan, let me finish, please. He took a shaky breath. After you left, I sat in that apartment for 2 hours, and I realized you're the first person in 4 years who's demanded I actually show up. Not just physically, but emotionally. And instead of being grateful, I got defensive. I pushed you away because it was easier than admitting I don't know how to do this. Tears were sliding down Claire's face. But I want to learn, Ethan said. I want to figure out how to be the person you deserve. Not just when it's easy, but when I'm stressed, when I'm scared, when every instinct tells me to close off and protect myself. He stepped closer. I love you, Claire. I think I've loved you since you called me out at that restaurant. And I'm terrified, absolutely terrified, that I'll mess this up. But I'm more terrified of losing you because I was too much of a coward to try. Claire couldn't speak. I started seeing a therapist, he continued, 2 days ago. I told her everything. About Amanda, about my walls, about you. And she said something that gutted me. She said, I've been living like someone who's already grieving a loss that hasn't happened yet. That I'm so afraid of being hurt that I've been hurting myself instead. Ethan, I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to be the guy at the bar who chooses death over vulnerability. And I want to be someone who's brave enough to love you, even if it's messy, even if it's hard. He reached for her hand carefully like she might pull away. So I'm here, asking you to give me another chance. Not because I deserve it, but because I'm finally willing to do the work. Real work. Therapy, communication, showing up even when I'm scared. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm here because you're worth changing for, and because losing you made me realize I don't want to survive anymore. I want to actually live. Claire looked at him, truly looked, at the man who'd said cruel things, and then spent weeks proving he could be better, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the way his hand trembled in hers. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Promise me that when you're scared, you won't shut me out. That you'll tell me, even if your voice shakes, that you'll let me see all of you, the messy parts, the parts you think are unlovable. I promise. And promise me that if this gets too hard, you won't run. That you'll fight for us, even when it's easier to walk away. Claire, he cupped her face gently, I'd rather die than lose you. And this time I actually mean it. She laughed through her tears. That's still dramatic. I'm working on it. She kissed him then, soft, tender, tasting like salt and hope and second chances. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered, even though you're infuriating and emotionally stunted, and you said the worst possible thing before you even met me. Especially because of that? Maybe, she smiled. It means you have nowhere to go but up. He laughed, the sound breaking something open in both of them. 6 months later, Claire stood in Ethan's apartment, their apartment now, and barely recognized it. They'd repainted, added bookshelves filled with novels he was slowly working through, hung photos from their trips, a weekend in the Berkshires, her teaching him to ice skate, both of them laughing at his complete lack of coordination. The space felt lived in, loved. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm glad I stayed for dinner that night. Even though I was an asshole, especially because of that. She turned in his arms. You've come a long way from I'd rather die than marry her. He winced. Are you ever going to let me live that down? Absolutely not. Fair. He kissed her forehead. For the record, I'd very much like to marry you someday. If you'll have me. Someday? When you're ready. No pressure. I just want you to know. His voice softened. You're it for me, Claire. You're the person who made me want to be better, who made me believe I could be. She looked up at him. This man who'd started as her worst nightmare and become her home. Ask me again in a year, she said. A year? I want to make sure you've finished at least 10 novels first. I have standards. He laughed, bright and genuine. Deal. They stood in their apartment, their home, as the sun set over the city, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and somehow built something beautiful anyway. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, they'd already found everything they needed. 1 year later, Ethan took Claire back to Marcel's, the restaurant where their disastrous first date had somehow become the beginning of everything. Same corner table, same candlelight. But this time, when he dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring, there was no hesitation in his voice. Claire Donovan, he said, his eyes bright with tears and joy and absolute certainty. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate either. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. And somewhere in a bar across the city, a different man was probably saying something stupid about a blind date he didn't want to go on. But that was his story. This one was theirs. And it was just beginning. If this story reminded you that people can change, that love can grow from the most broken beginnings, that second chances are worth taking, then maybe you needed to hear it today. Maybe we all did. Sometimes the worst thing someone says becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Not because the words didn't hurt, but because what came after proved that hurt doesn't have to be the ending.